Welcome to Retail Retold, the stories behind how that store landed in your neighborhood. I'm Chris Ressa, in conversation with the people and stories shaping retail and real estate. Brought to you by DLC. Welcome to Retail Retold, everyone. I'm your host, Chris Ressa, and I am excited to be joined by a longtime friend, Brett Sheets. Brett has been in the business for over 30 years. He's the SVP of leasing at Barclay Group, but he's been at retailers, public REITs. He was a broker. Now he's a developer. He's got a wealth of knowledge. I'm excited for him to be here. Welcome to the show, Brett.
Thank you very much for having me. This is awesome.
So, Brett, why don't you tell everybody a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, well, I'm actually based in Phoenix, Arizona. That's where Barclay Group is, my current employer. Before that, I was at VERREIT, which was coal. We were one of the largest REITs, publicly traded REITs in the country, and so I was their head of leasing as well. We sold to Realty Income. I decided I want to try something different, and so I decided to try the developer side of the business. The Barclay folks here, I chose them, and they chose me. I chose them because they're just good people. They're one of the most active developers in the country. We're mostly developing grocery anchored centers. We do some fitness centers, and I handle all the pre-leasing of the ground ups and all the renewals for the existing center. So that's sort of where I'm at now.
So it's an interesting time.
Yeah,
Oh,
go ahead.
go ahead. No, go. Prior to that.
Yeah, prior to that, I was with a retailer, a national retailer, and I helped grow them across the country. When I got there, they started out with 275 locations. It was franchise driven. We can have a whole conversation about franchises, can't we? It was franchise driven. It was Cold Stone Creamery. I can say who it was. We had 275 locations, and I grew it to about 1,200. So I was responsible for their real estate. But I got to tell you, that gave me that national exposure that I felt like I was lacking, because before that I was a broker, and when you're a broker in one state, it's a little bit more of a challenge to get that out of state, cross the country sort of exposure. So I felt like that really catapulted my career, quite frankly. So as you mentioned, four different really disciplines. Pure broker, learned it on the streets, cut my teeth on the streets. Got my own business, worked commission, straight commission. Then I went to work for a retailer, and then from there, the REIT, one of the largest institutional REITs in the country, and then now here at Barclay Group.
I'm curious, most people in any industry don't float from side to side of their business, right? As much as being the head of development for a retail chain, and such kudos. I think there's a lot of people out there who are probably fans of Cold Stone and wouldn't be able to go one if it wasn't for Brett Sheets. So I think it is really interesting. It's a really interesting job and really fascinating. But I would say, while there's some similarities, it is quite different than your job as the head of leasing for VERREIT and what you do now. And so what would you say to someone who's looking to make a big transition like that? Because I think a lot of people out there find it hard to go from side to side. They feel pigeonholed.
Yeah, I would agree. I think some people just can't make that jump. I think it's real hard for a broker to jump over to the retailer side, in my opinion. I've seen a lot of retailers jump over to the developer side. I don't see a lot of retailers jump over to the brokerage side. I tell you, the thing about, and I worked for a franchise concept, and like I said, we could talk for hours about franchise concepts, and it was a great concept. They were growing like crazy, but I always say, when you're a retailer, whether you're a franchise or other, and we can talk about what's hot and what's not, but when you're a retailer and you're growing and you're hot, but as soon as you stop growing, you're not. And I sort of read the writing on the wall kind of early that, hey, we're growing too many stores too fast. And that's when I decided to make the jump over to the landlord side, the REIT side.
So I think, at the time, if you were Cole or, why would you be interested in Brett Sheets at the time? What do you think? And like, forget about even our industry. Like, someone wants to hop over. Like, I think when someone posts a job, they're looking for specific requirements, and you probably didn't meet a lot of them that they were looking for. So, how do you get that job?
Yeah, no, that's a great question too. My good looks and charm. Uh, just kidding. A lot of people tell me I have a radio voice, but a radio face, by the way. You got
Me too.
both. You got both. Anyway, so I think what they wanted at the time, they were strictly had one product type, and it was net leased REIT. So it was Walgreens and Rite Aids and Walmarts and Home Depots. But they wanted to grow fast, and they wanted to get more credit. They wanted to get more WALT, weighted average lease term, and they wanted to spend more money. And so the way to do that is to buy big power centers, right? And so
Oh,
that's you buy a power center with the PetSmarts and the Rosses and the TJs and all those things, and that's how you buy into the investment grade tenant. And that was their goal. So they saw that, and I was a shop guy, right? I was at Cold Stone. I was looking at 12 to 2,000 square feet. But what they saw was I had the relationships, and we can talk about relationships later too, relationships across the country. Because I was out meeting with all the developers, meet with all the landlords, meeting with all the brokers, and so I had relationships in every market, and they had to grow in all 50 states. So I think they saw that in me, and I think they also saw that I had some process and systems because we were growing so crazy at Cold Stone that we had to have processes and systems and good people, but I felt like I managed a process and it got deals done fast, and they wanted to see that happen over at Cole Very. It was Cole at the time, but Very.
got it. Okay. Yeah, I think it's a great point. Like, having a large network or having a good deep network are critical in, if you're finding a job or whatever you do. But appreciate you sharing that. So I think you're in an interesting place now, right? We're in a volatile market for development. Development's always tough. It's never easy, right? Development's always tough, right? But you're in a pretty tough development time, as am I. I'm in a tough development time. There's usually opportunity in times like this, but how are you navigating the waters? Question one, and two, what are some of the challenges you're running into?
Gosh, yeah, so many. And it's interesting sitting in the 3 hour development meeting that we have every other Monday. And I'm learning a lot. This team's great for that. But on the other hand, we have close to 40 development projects in different phases. And it could be a, small little EG's redevelopment, build to suit, up to, a huge 200,000 square foot grocery anchored center with shop space. Um, I would say we're sort of suited well here in Arizona right now because of the amount of people moving in. So that's the good thing. We got a lot of people moving in. So, retail follows rooftops, the old saying. So I think that's a really, really good thing for us. But we're also building in Colorado, and which is a pretty growth market too. Texas, pretty high growth market.
Sure.
And we're starting to dip into a little bit of the Carolinas and the East Coast, but that's more client specific. But what we're seeing, and it's really gotten sort of crazy just in the past few months, what I've noticed is site work, just to do site work because of um, costs of cement and concrete and fuel surcharges. Um, all that labor shortages has really affected our costs. And there's a certain point that the tenants, there's a certain tipping point where they can only go so high, right, on rent, and so
Yeah,
that makes it a challenge. And we've come up with some creative ways, and we've met with a lot of retailers, and I think they get it in general, and so that's a good thing. But I, bottom line, I have one end cap in a multi-tenant building. I get 6 LOIs. That's a good problem to have.
great problem.
Um, yeah, and so I've got we have plenty of activity, so I think the tenants still want to grow out there. My concern is with this recession that we are may or may not be in. I think something's got to give here. Hopefully, it's temporary. But what we're doing with the tenants, I'm getting more percentage rent because they can only afford to pay so much. So I'm starting to really implement percentage rent. It's a fair percentage rent. It's a win-win. And then I'm getting a little bit more term. Some of these tenants that would only do 10 years, man, get up to 12 years. They're not going to do 15 or 20, but even shop guys will do that. Just gives me more time to amortize the costs into the deal. And we're pushing higher rents. We really are. We're pushing mid to high 40s in this market for brand new developments because there's nowhere else for them to go.
So there's been a lot of discussion about annual increases on rents. One of the things you brought up is interesting is, maybe that's a place for percentage rent. We all want to get annual increases because of the inflation. But
Yeah.
when you hit a roadblock, right, most people don't want to pay 8% per year.
Right.
Maybe a bridge is percentage rent. But have you been able to get, and a friend of mine, Jason Richter, recently talked about this or posted that on LinkedIn. Are you getting solid annual bumps?
Absolutely. I think on the shop tenants, 3% annuals. We're allowed to talk about this, right? 3%
Yeah.
annuals all day long on the shop tenants. The bigger boxes, I'm pushing 12%, 12 and a half sometimes.
Every
Every
five, not
five.
annually.
Yeah, every five.
If you're getting
And then,
12% bumps
yeah,
every year on
okay.
a box deal, we should
Uh,
talk offline.
yeah. And then on the ground lease market is really hot right now, especially in Arizona. So we're able to, instead of, do reverse builds or build to suits or sell out parcels, we're able to do ground leases, which
So
we love.
that's really interesting. So why do you think the ground lease market's so hot?
I think it's lack of product, and you know, I, I'm somewhat lucky. I don't call myself the Maytag repairman, but I've got grocery anchored centers, Fry specifically, Kroger product, and the guy across the street doesn't have an anchor. So most of my tenants, they want to be, I'm drawing 5, 6,000 people a day with a grocery store, and then in some cases when we can buy enough land, we'll put a fitness, EOS Fitness, we'll put it in the same center. They're drawing 2,000 people a day. So I'm drawing the traffic. So people kind of want to be over with us. That's why they'll do a ground lease. It's getting tougher, but I don't see it drying up in the near future. Now the ground leases, I'm only getting to 10% every 5 year because they're spending all the money. They're spending the investment. And we're delivering typically, curb in, ready pad, kind of rough graded, and they go to work.
For those who don't know, can you play teacher? Can you explain what a ground lease is?
Well, I'll tell you, at Verit, if I did 3 ground leases in 10 years, that would be a lot. So I come over here and there are ground leases everywhere. So ground leases typically is going to happen on an out parcel or a pad. They're typically longer term. We've been getting 20. Some only want 15, but 20-year ground leases. It's basically as is. You deliver the pad, you don't give them any contribution. And then I'll walk through that too. You don't give any contribution. They write you a check for the ground pad, and they do all the work. You got to approve the elevations. So the ground lease is something as a REIT or a real estate investor love ground leases because you don't have to collect rents. You don't have to collect. You're not paying real estate taxes. You're not doing insurance. It's almost like a net leased asset. Whereas there are situations where we're going to it's kind of structured, the lease is structured as a ground lease, but we're making a contribution. So we'll typically cap that contribution at this point. So kind of like a reverse build to suit, hey, we'll write you a check for $1 million. Here's what your rent's going to be. And then you build your building. And then kind of the third part of that is the true build to suit, and that's when we're building the building for them. We're going to turn it over to them, and that's more like a typical lease. And we like those too. It's just you got to underwrite the credit, and you
Yeah.
got to understand the costs of building that building.
And yeah, for those who don't know, a ground lease, someone's actually, instead of leasing the building from you at $1 per square foot, they're leasing the ground for a rate, annualized basis. They're paying you monthly, and typically they're doing their own common area maintenance, paying real estate taxes directly to the municipality, and they are self-insuring the building. It's a more passive, less operational for a landlord, and typically it has to do with, and so why would a retailer want to do that? It has to do with, one, access. There might not be any other opportunities. And two, sometimes their financial model that they're using actually turns out better than paying a higher rent for a build to suit. Their cost of capital is cheaper. It's cheaper for them to build the building, own the real estate, depreciate the real estate, than it is for them to actually rent that building for you. And they pay you a smaller fee for the ground than they do the actual building.
Exactly, and a lot of tenants out there have not or have stayed away from ground leases. And
Yep.
we could name a few, but they started to realize they were losing market share because that hamburger guy that would never do a ground lease, well, his competitors like, okay, I can get some market share here. I'll do a ground lease, get a store open, and so that's part of it too. Is just
Yep.
getting control of the market.
So I want to take a pivot for a moment. I want you to share a story. You have a story about a former Circuit City that. Why don't you tell that story?
Yeah, yeah. I won't say what market because it's just in case to protect the innocent. But it was a former Circuit City, about
Innocent.
35,000 feet. Um, we hired brokers in the market. They did a great job. I think the
So the
after
building was
this
vacant. We're talking about a vacant
vacant.
building that used to be a Circuit City.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Um, anyway, I think within the second month, I went out to go tour it. I had to go see it, touch it, feel it, and so I met the brokers out there with one of my deal makers, and so we opened up the back door, and the place is trashed. There's spray paint everywhere. Felt like somebody maybe set it up as a haunted house. It
Oh my
had
God.
blood things and things hanging from the ceiling. It was a weird deal. They had a fire in the middle of it. Thank goodness the building didn't burn down. So anyway, it
They
just got
made like a
completely.
bonfire in the middle of the building?
Yes, yes. Uh-huh.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I think they had chairs around it. Somebody was having fun in there. It might have been one of these, parties
Oh
that
my God.
people put together. So
I
so
never
that
got
that
invited. When I was younger, I never got invited to the Circuit City party. So,
yeah, no, for me either. So, sort of fast forward, we had a big pylon sign right on the freeway, right on the free. I mean, just perfect. But we lost that pylon sign in 6 months if we didn't release it. That pylon sign went back to the city. They could tear it down. So I lose the pylon sign. It was in the REAs, in the restrictions,
wow,
CC&Rs.
what a weird thing that the pylon sign is yours unless you release, not the building, the pylon?
No, I had to release the building.
Oh my God.
It,
Or you
yeah,
lost the pylon.
or we lost the pylon. So
What was the
huge,
city
huge,
going to
huge.
do with it? Put up like welcome to Main Street in such and such
Yeah,
town?
I think there was way too many billboards, way too many pylon signs. So this was the city's way of reducing all that off the freeway, right? To
Oh
clean
my
up their city.
God.
Yeah,
And for those
crazy.
who don't know, retailers and brands love pylon signs. It's a huge value. Not having that makes leasability of the building a lot less uh, likely.
Yep, exactly. And the tenant, and we had lots of prospects. Um, they had to be open.
Oh my God, in
They had,
six
they had to be
months.
open. They had to be operating in the building within those 6 months. So it was, crazy timing. There's no way we were going to do it. So what we came up with is our brokerage house, and I'll give kudos to them. I should probably say it's CBRE, and we'll give them a shout out. We had them sign a lease with us for a temporary, not temporary, but signed a lease with us for a West office, satellite office. So CBR, and somebody had to be there. So CBRE opened it up. We signed a little lease with them that we could terminate, right? Signed a lease with them. They got phones. They moved in a desk. They sent one of their junior guys, a new guy in the business, probably now he's been in the business for a while, had one of their junior guys sit in that building every day, with lights and a phone and a computer, and was opened up, for a satellite office.
Oh my God, this is one of the best stories I've ever heard. This is amazing.
Yeah. And fast forward, we ended up getting the deal signed. It actually took about 12 months for them to get lined up and moved
What
in.
was the new use of the tenant that was coming in?
Well, I shouldn't say because I think they already closed down.
That's all right.
But yeah, it was a while ago when I did this. So I haven't been to this market. Remember, I had stuff in 49 states. It
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
50 states. I couldn't remember all of them. But it was your typical retail type use that like the parking, like the exposure off the freeway, all that. It's just as you know, it takes a while to backfill a junior box.
Yep.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So that's my
How that
crazy
is
story.
that is crazy. So, what a creative. First off, kudos to CBRE for doing that.
Hmm.
I'm sure the rent was light since they had one person in there. You didn't charge them a lot of rent to lease the box,
It was
but
pretty
they
light.
leased it for you so that you could get around the fact of not giving the pylon sign back to the municipality so that you could get your junior box retailer in.
Yeah. Total team effort.
Wild.
Yeah.
That is totally wild.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that before. I'm put back on my heels because that is super creative. And you were working. This was at when you were at Verit.
Yeah. Correct. Right. Correct.
What did the guys at Verit say? Were they like, "This is the most creative thing in the world," or were they like,
Oh,
"This is crazy"?
very happy that we backfilled it. That's what they were happy about. I don't think they cared about the sign going away because it would have been my job to backfill it anyway, right?
Right.
But
Right.
as you know, it would have been harder and probably less rent. So,
Wow.
yeah,
Kudos. What a cool
yeah,
story, Brett. That is a good
yeah.
one. Okay. So what else What else is top of mind for you in the world as you're in this crazy retail real estate world today?
Well, let's see. I've got 5 LOIs sitting on my desk that I need to answer here by the end of the day. And so, as I said earlier, I think activity is still tremendous. And I think the tenants are willing to step up. It's just trying to work with them because their costs have gone up, right? It used to be, you talk to one of these haircutting guys, I won't mention their names, and they say, "Hey, Brett, yeah, that worked at the first deal we did with them at the beginning of the year. $45 a square foot worked to build out a vanilla box. Now it's costing me 65." So I'm not going to make up the whole 65, but maybe I can come somewhere in the middle if they give me a little bit more rent, or I incorporate that percentage rent idea, or I get higher bumps. So we're willing to write the checks if the numbers still crunch. But what we're trying to do now is we'll deliver a shell on the new construction. We'll deliver the gray shell. If it's a restaurant, we've got I call it a modified gray shell. I think we do a pretty good job giving modified gray shells. And then we give an allowance. We just don't want to take the vanilla box construction risk right now, especially since it takes so long to get these leases signed. We just don't want to do it. We've come up with some language to put in LOIs that basically says a market condition exists, and if you don't sign the lease by this time and costs go up more than 10, 15%, we're going to have a discussion. We're either going to have to raise your rent or reduce your TI because our costs are going up as well. And I can tell you, most of the tenants have been they're not happy about it, but they seem to be okay with it. And
Yeah.
because they
So
got to
what
get
we
stores open.
started, we've done something similar. Because we've tweaked a bunch of things. The first thing we did, to me, the answer to that, if your construction team's good, is, which I know yours is, the first step to that is the speed to execution. And so what we would do is we would put in and say, listen, in the LOI, due to inflationary costs in construction, the lease needs to be signed by this date,
Mhm.
or we cannot honor the rent. And what I would tell you on the shop space, most of the tenants got the lease done by that. Because we were transparent, because we would say, okay, our construction team would say, listen, I think I'm gonna be able to build it in this price range, but I'm telling you, if I can't start by this date, that means I can't deliver by this date. And in the northern states, we have issues, which you probably face in Colorado, right? If you don't get started in construction in September, you could be not building until April because the ground's frozen. Now, that time window, the construction guys are not going to stick their neck out to hold pricing,
Right.
because that's too long of a window. So that was one way we got around it.
How much time did you give to sign the lease? Was that negotiable, or did you just throw a,
No,
like
we
a
would we
90 day,
would
30
it would be fact based. I would say it's based on talking to construction, and they would say, hey, I need to start drawing plans and by this date, and I need to start construction here. So whatever that means for you, I need to start construction. I'll use around. I need to start construction on April 1st.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's February 10th, right, in that scenario, you need a lease signed pretty quickly. If it's December 15th, we would say, all right, you have 45 days, something like that, to sign this lease. And, otherwise the rent's subject to change. We had, I think, one instance where the rent did change, and the group said, listen, we were too slow, we get it. Let's see, I don't know that we can make the numbers work, but I understand you were very clear with us.
I like that.
That was an easier way for us because we're pretty confident in our construction team. But I've been in a lot of scenarios. I did a grocery store where we were to deliver base building work, but then the tenant improvement work, we were doing it, it was a turnkey, was capped at a certain dollar amount, and then they reimbursed us anything over. Well, it turned into, at reconciliation, it turned into chaos because, well, that really wasn't tenant improvement work, that's base building work, and it was gray in the lease. Additionally, they had the option, the tenant had the option to pay me cash back for it or pay a higher rent spread over the course of the lease. Now, in this scenario, the tenant didn't want the rent to increase, so they paid. But to get to an agreement of what that number was, post the cap, was tough. And so, you could easily say something like, all right, I'm going to spend $50. Anything over that is your contribution. But then you get into the stuff of did you get 3 bids? How do I know that was the best value for the $50 a foot? And so when it came to all this small shop leasing and the amount of activity, I thought that would be a bottleneck. So I stuck to the rent piece and challenged the construction team. Give me the date you can hold pricing to.
Right.
So that's what we did.
Yeah, and I hear you. The problem we're having here in this market, because the growth is a lot of contractors won't even hold the price for more than 30 days. So a lot of them want it to be, they want a right to change it, once they start the work, which is just crazy talk. So I have the confidence in our construction team for sure, and our development team. I just don't know if I have the confidence in the contractors, but I think that's got to change. I mean, I think once the subs are starting to call us and ask us for work, I think that's when things will change. And it may not be for another 3 to 6 months, but that's kind of what we need to happen in this market, because right now you can't even get 3 bids, from some of these guys. We have issues with all the supply chain. We're having issues with HVACs and transformers, the SES switches, electrical switches. I mean, that's holding up stores from getting open.
The electric gear's
crazy. That's got to give. And I was talking to a couple of.
I was on my team and reported back to me. Was on a phone call with Dick's Sporting Goods, and electric gear manufacturer, because we're turnkeying a Dick's and their electric gear manufacturer guy, they were talking. And Dick's was apparently challenging, like, what are you talking about on this timeline? I think my takeaway from it was this was the issue, was there's a lot of people that manufacture electric gears.
Yeah.
But there's only like one group that manufactures the components that go in the electric gear.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, and that's the same thing we're hearing. I talked to one of the junior boxes. I don't know if he wants me to mention his name. He, in that 20 to 30,000 square foot range. And he told me they're pre-ordering HVACs and inventorying them, trying to do the same thing with switches and also transformers. And so because they have such a huge growth plan. So
Yeah, I know who you're talking about, but yes. So I think it's an interesting time for sure.
yeah, it is. But
You
I've
mentioned
talked
the
to some.
activity. I think one of the things I would say is tenant demand is robust. I think people want to access market share.
Mhm.
The economics of deals are challenged by construction costs, but the industry is just so creative and they're finding ways, whether it's, back in the day we're temp leasing to a CBRE's kid who's on a phone so we save a pylon, or whether it's through some creative percentage rent measure now or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
I think the industry is innovative.
Yeah, I agree. It's tough with our construction guys doing their performance. Now construction loans are pushing almost 7%, 6.5,
Sure.
7%, and so that's that hasn't really caught up yet, but it's starting to. So,
Yeah, and you mentioned on the franchise side, right? I've talked to them, right? Their construction costs have gone up. Their SBA loan interest rates have gone up. There's a whole, their costs have gone up. But I often say, once we sign a lease, I can't change the rent. Could always raise the price of the burger.
yeah, good point.
I can't
And
raise
they're
the price
going
of
up,
the burger.
and they seem like they're going up.
I can't raise the price of the burger.
Yeah.
What about the non-monetary? What's any challenges you're seeing in non-monetary things in deals?
Well, it kind of relates to monetary, but timing,
Timing.
especially with the ground leases and even with the mom and pops trying to figure out getting permitting, and because they're all having issues with permitting. Architects are all behind, lawyers are all behind, and so the timing is just killing us right now.
Yeah, it's one, and there's a lot of like people want. I'm like, I don't want any contingency periods. I want to sign a deal and have a deal. And there's all these different like periods of time that you have to get through to get to like when the actual lease is effective. You sign the lease, and then there's this huge other period of time, and we're like, we want to get to a lease deal.
Yeah, you want to know my goals. I want to know when rent commencement. When am I going to get rent, whatever that
Right.
is. And that's getting to be a huge challenge for us, is that timing thing. Exclusives, they're here to stay. Co-tenancies, we've sort of been kind of pushing back pretty big on co-tenancies because we only have one anchor, and so we're careful with that, and rarely do they close. So we're careful with that, but otherwise, all the typical, you know,
I've seen a bigger push by tenants on assignment provisions so that they can create flexibility. If a black swan event like we recently had happens.
yeah,
So we've been pushing back. We lost a deal on an assignment provision recently that was in lease, which hadn't happened in a long time.
years, yeah.
Because the tenant didn't feel like they had the flexibility they needed if something happened and they wanted to sell. But we felt we had no control of who was in our shopping center and what it would be. And we were investing in this tenant, and neither of us could get comfortable. That's rare, but it was just a eyebrow raiser for me.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
Well, Brett, this has been great. Any last things you want to talk about that we haven't touched on? Covered a lot.
Renewal strategies, and because it's something I've been dealing with for a while here, because everybody's trying to retrade the options, right? Because the option's their option, not our option.
Yep.
And so I always listen to them. If you don't want an option, give me a call, but you have to show me your P&Ls, show me your balance sheet, show me how you're doing, so that I can justify. Because you tell me you're over market rents. Show me your sales. And so for me, and the retailers hate it when I say this, market rent is not just what the deal down the street can be done for, but it's what you can afford to pay. And so show me that you need the help. If you need the help, then maybe we'll figure something out. But if you don't need the help, you're going to option. That's what we signed. You agreed to it when you signed the lease. You should agree to it now. So I'm seeing a lot of that, and lately it's been working out great for me. I'm getting probably 98, 99% hit rate on renewing tenants when they call me up and ask me for help. Some of them won't even get me the balance sheet or the sales. They just say, "Well, we don't give that." I'm like, "Well, then I look forward to your renewal." So that's one sort of theme that I'm seeing out there, because people, and it's been around for years, where they never want to take their option. They want to retrade you. You just got to do your homework. You got to know, can they move somewhere? Because we all know, some of those cosmetic type companies will move if there's another opportunity down the street, if they can get a brand new store, if you don't work with them. I mean, there's tenants out there that are like that.
The the thing I would say, and I think you give some good advice, and everyone out there, this is a former retailer who's saying this. Let's keep that in mind. Brett's a former
Yeah,
retailer saying this.
exactly.
So I would say the following. At the end of the day, it's a tough spot for a retailer right now because occupancy is super high. There's not a lot of options. But even if there was, the cost of construction, the rent the adjacent landlord needs to make the deal work, most likely is more than they're paying you.
Yeah, very
It's
good point.
pretty hard.
Yeah,
Or the retailer has to spend a lot of money to move that store.
right.
They would have to have a significantly actual above market rental rate to make the reload pencil in today's environment. And so we're seeing high renewal rates as well because of that.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of like a house. You don't want to move because the construction costs to go build a new house have gone up, and the interest rates have doubled.
Exactly.
So people aren't going to move anymore.
People
You
now
know,
have 3% handcuffs with their mortgages.
exactly. Yeah.
So, okay. Last part of our show is a fun part, Brett. I got three
All
fun
right.
questions for you. Ready?
Shoot.
One, what extinct retailer do you wish would come back from the dead?
That's an easy one for me, only because it brings back such great memories. And this retailer, I think they blew it, completely blew it. But I would take my kids, both my kids, to Toys R Us,
Uh-huh.
and it was, to me, it was entertainment. It was me. I could spend a couple hours there, right, and entertain my kids at Toys R Us, and I'd let them pick out one thing every time, but they would try everything. They had a smile on their face. I think just I missed Toys R Us as a concept. Love to see that type of thing come back, but they didn't invest in their stores. Their stores started getting dirty. Inventory started getting light, so I kind of saw the writing on the wall. That's for sure. That's
Yeah.
that's that's probably the one I miss the most. How about you?
Well, I've answered this before. There was a store my dad used to take me to called Rickle. It was a home improvement store, and some fond memories. My dad. There's many stores that I wish would come back
Yeah.
though, but
Isn't it
Rickle's the
funny
answer I
that we
give.
talk we talk about the memories,
Yeah,
that we miss the stores that are gone because of the memories, not necessarily the product,
yeah.
right? So
Question two: what item over $20 is the last item you bought in a store?
now I might embarrass myself, but that's an easy one for me. Wine, or
Fine,
burgundy wine.
Burgundy. Okay. Last question,
Yeah.
Brett. If you and I were shopping in a Target and I lost you, what aisle would I find you in?
Geez, that's a loaded one. Um, you know, I used to hang out in the I won't go there. I used to hang out really in the electronics area, but I just that's boring to me now. So I'm in the outdoor section, the
Okay,
sporty section. Is there one new game, board game or outdoor game that I can get that we can play at parties,
got it.
something like that. So that's kind of where I'm hanging.
All
And
right,
and also, by the way, probably in the grocery section, checking the wine. You know,
touche. All right, Brett. Well, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for hopping on.
Appreciate it.
Um, and
Yeah.
are you going to New York?
I'm trying. It's a little
All right.
tight, but I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to give it a
We'll have
shot.
to connect.
Absolutely. I really appreciate you inviting me.
Stay on for 1 second after I hit stop.
No worries.
Appreciate you watching. Hit subscribe. See you in the next one.